Ask Reddit.
Police officers of Reddit, who's the smartest criminal you've ever encountered?
A French thief who spent 10 years in prison became a comedian when he got out. One of his stories finds a building, goes in, chooses a floor and transforms the exit door into an extra apartment. Puts the apartment number, fake lock, welcome rug, etc. Puts an iPhone for sale. The person comes to buy it, he opens the door in a shower robe and says give me 1 second, I'm just gonna count the money and poof. He's gone from the exit stairs. This seems like exactly the kind of crime a comedian would commit. A friend of my brother moved to Israel where for a period of time it was acceptable to drive with an American driver's license. He was pulled over for speeding and when asked for his license, gave the officer his Costco card. Costco is a membership-based retail warehouse in the US and a few other countries. The exchange apparently went something like this. Officer. Costco? What is Costco? Friend. It's the state I'm from. Officer. That sounds made up. Friend. There are lots of states you probably haven't heard of. Have you heard of Arkansas? How about Idaho? Officer. I guess not, friend. Well, I'm from the small state of Costco. The officer didn't have a response and wound up writing the ticket to someone with a Costco driver's license. Friend framed the ticket and still has it hanging on his wall. Reminds me of a family friend of mine, very funny Australian with an absolutely horrendous bogan accent. Well, late 80s he's driving through Texas and runs a red light and is immediately pulled over by a 250-pound Texan police officer with an equally horrendous accent. The way the stories goes, this man is obviously not the brightest chap. So our friend, when asked about running the red light, gets very apologetic and explains that he gets easily confused because in Australia you know how things are reversed down there, red means go and green means stop. The cop actually let this man go with a warning, I did not know that. Well, in America, red means stop, so don't make this mistake again.
A guy I went to high school had been stealing from Walmart in a pretty clever way. He would grab video games, MP3 players, beer etc. and throw them away in a trash can in the garden section. The workers never checked the trash contents and he would just wait, sometimes 5 hours until they emptied the trash in the back dumpster and hop in to get his items. Once he took a cardboard box from a display inside, filled it with video games, a PS3, and extra controllers. He grabbed some tape and pens and drew all over the box and taped it up to make it look used and tossed it. An hour later he had a whole new PS3 and stack of games.
He ever get caught?
I don't believe so.
That's not stealing. That's just taking trash from a bin. As for what they see as trash, it's none of the guy's business. I have a friend who is no longer a criminal but committed crimes for about 15 years and never got arrested or even investigated. Some of his highlights. Growing weed in a shed on his neighbor's property. The neighbor was old and never left the house. Buying a building under a fake name, taking out huge loans against it, getting HUD money, and burning it all down. Sold fake raffle tickets to raffle off stuff he never had and never raffled. I can't remember how many times he pulled that scam, but he bought a new car with the money. He moved a bunch of times because people would suspect him of being a con man. His dad was in jail for similar stuff. But he was never even questioned by the police about anything. Now he has a family and a normal job. His finest con yet. Edit. Thank you for my silver, stranger. I am grateful for all of the fake internet points. He's playing the long con. Probably working up to conning Social Security. He's going to steal the priceless chandelier, it's priceless. As I'm taking it down, a woman catches me. She tells me to stop. It's her father's business. She's Tiffany. I say no. We make love all night. In the morning, the cops come and I escape in one of their uniforms. I tell her to meet me in Mexico, but I go to Canada. I don't trust her. Besides, I like the cold. 30 years later, I get a postcard. I have a son and he's the chief of police. This is where the story gets interesting. I tell Tiffany to meet me in Paris by the Trocadero. She's been waiting for me all these years. She's never taken another lover. I don't care. I don't show up. I go to Berlin. That's where I stashed the chandelier. I had a grandfather that was picking up 2 social security checks. He spent the time to have 2 identities. More like evading taxes. Lots more to earn that way and less people breathing down your neck.
I remember an officer telling me about a B&E alarm he and his team responded to. No one was there to report the alarm, it must have been a security monitoring company that called. When police showed up, everything seemed normal, most lights were off, and there was an employee still working. Explains he was there working late and must have set off an alarm. They almost believed him until he said before saying the name of the company he worked for. After that it was downhill, but with a little more research, he would have pretty much gotten away with it. I don't care how long I've been working for a company, I'd probably still say yeah with my dumbest too. I'll be sure not to loiter around any crime scenes now.
I do that in normal conversations too. Good thing I don't go places. Sometimes it takes me a minute to remember how old I am when buying alcohol, it must not come across as very convincing. I worked with this one guy who had a lengthy record. He had a system for getting released if he got caught. After committing a crime, if the police were in pursuit and he knew he was about to be cornered, he would act insane. His girl would play along with it, telling the police that he was off his medication. The police would arrest him, but then send him to a mental ward, with papers instructing the ward to release to police once he was cleared. Once he was in the mental ward, he would cause a distraction that would make the person attending the desk with the file cabinet to leave said cabinet. He would then crawl to the file cabinet, look for his release to police papers, and then would literally eat the papers. When the psych evaluators decided that he was stable enough to be released, there would be no instructions to send him to the police, and he would be released to the general public. He did this about 10 times until police officers noticed him back on the streets. This stunt forced the state to change their procedure for detaining mentally unstable suspects. Most of them are really stupid, so this guy isn't a criminal mastermind, but here goes. He wanted to rob a jeweler's on our city's main street. So he found out the flat beside the jeweler's was empty, and he hid there. For 2 weeks he triggered the alarm on purpose several times a night, massive headache for the police and the business. We turned up to see nothing there, nothing on cameras, thought it was just a fluke, so the jewelers turned off the alarm system and said they'd wait until the morning to get a new one installed or that one rewired because something wasn't right. As soon as he heard that and the police leaving, he tore down the wall, had already been working on this apparently, and robbed the place taking his sweet time. Escaped without anyone noticing anything for hours until the jewelers came back in the morning. Then he tried to resell something he stole which had a serial number on it and got caught. So not that smart after all. Good effort though. He did all the hard work pretty well. The hardest part about stealing high-dollar goods is selling the merch. Edit. Of course my top comment is about criminal activity. Thanks Reddit. Yep, and unless you're lucky or find someone stupid enough to buy stolen goods for full retail price, you're going to be fencing them at a heavy discount. For sure, shouldn't even be trying to sell them at retail. Giving a huge discount is the unspoken agreement to keep mouths shut. Should have melted down the gold and sold it. No swiping. Swiper and no swiping. Swiper and no swiping. Dora the Explorer. Oh man, Swiper, the kleptomanic fox that thinks his little bandana will protect him from the wrath of a Hispanic girl and her monkey familiar. My favorite was the guy who stole a post office mailbox off the street, repainted it, and then put it next to the night deposit box at a bank. And hung an out-of-order sign on the deposit box. All the businesses came along and dropped off their deposits in the mailbox. Not a police officer, but was an RA in college. My university owned all the houses adjacent to campus. These were ran like dorms, with RAs and the same rules, which included a very strict no alcohol policy. It was a privilege to live in the houses, and priority was given to upperclassmen who were more likely to bend that rule because they were of age, and it was harder to police off campus and houses. There was a student who went around knocking on doors saying something like "I'm an RA," and housing director's name sent me for health and wellness checks. She'd find their booze, take it, and follow up with how she's doing them a favor by just giving them a warning. She wasn't actually an RA and was just keeping the booze for herself. The only reason she got found out was because she did it to an actual RA. The RA was male, they kept men and women housing separate, and just assumed he didn't know her because of that. It was only later he questioned why they had a female doing wellness checks on male housing. They did an investigation and asked other residents. Incidents dated back previous 2 years. Never found out who it was. Your RAs aren't actually allowed to go through our room. They come in, see no fire hazards, they aren't even allowed to open the fridge or any boxes or anything. As long as it isn't out in the open, we're good. Haha. My buddies and I did this to the freshmen when we were upperclassmen in college. The look on their scared little faces was priceless. Just carry a clipboard and a keyring carabiner, and no one asked questions. There's one guy I recently dealt with who is on parole. I stopped him in my city after he was looking to buy drugs. Usually people come from all over to buy drugs and then leave. I issue him a warning and let him go as it's pretty common, And he sang like a bird regarding the people he was trying to buy from. Anyway, the next day, I got a call from his parole officer who says he was alerted the guy was pulled over and wanted to verify that it was his guy that I stopped. I'm a little confused at first, but he goes on to say that the day before, he was scheduled to meet with him, but he had an excuse and bailed. His excuse was that he was in the hospital. Well, when he spoke with him the following day, he was able to provide documentation that he had entered the hospital day 1 and had left day 2. Well, I had stopped him at 1:15 in the morning, and after looking at the picture, it was 100% him. Turns out the guy had checked in then out of the hospital on day 1, then in and out again on day 2. He then rearranged half the paperwork to make it look like he was in the hospital overnight, which would make my car stop of him appear like I mixed him up with someone else, as well as give him a valid excuse to miss their meeting. Not sure what's gonna happen to that guy, but I thought it was pretty clever. So he checked himself in and out of the hospital before you stopped him? Seems like he was planning an excuse for popping hot on whatever drugs he was buying. I'm guessing opiates. Prison. More prison is what's going to happen to that guy. Haha, well, yeah. I mean, I'm curious if they can hit him with additional charges.